we had the development over the weekend that the vice president came back and met with Elizabeth Warren. How would the president deal with this if Biden actually decides to run? Here you have his current vice president against his former Secretary of State.
Yeah. Well, there's not an insignificant if in that question. And I think that's what everybody is pretty interested to find out, is what decision the vice president is going to make. The president has indicated his view that the decision that he made, I guess 7 years ago now, to add Joe Biden to the ticket as his running mate was the smartest decision that he had ever made in politics. And I think that should give you some sense of the president's view of Vice President Biden's aptitude for the top job.
So I assume that means the president would support Vice President Biden if he were to run. I mean, this is obviously a better decision than the Secretary of State he chose. So, are you suggesting? I mean, you said it was the best decision he'd made. So.
Yeah, it was, and I think what the president has spoke at quite some length about the appreciation, respect, and admiration he has for the service of Secretary Clinton, particularly in her 4 years as Secretary of State.
Just not his best decision.
Well, again, I think all of you and your coverage of some of the president's comments about Secretary Clinton have noted how warm those comments were. I'll just say that the vice president is somebody who has already run for president twice. He's been on a national ticket through 2 election cycles now, both in 2008 and in the re-election of 2012. And so I think you could make the case that there is probably no one in American politics today who has a better understanding of exactly what is required to mount a successful national presidential campaign. And that means that he's going to collect all the information that he needs to make a decision. He's indicated that he would make a decision and announce a decision before the end of the summer. So those of us who enjoy the summertime, I think, would assume that means he's got another month or so here to think about this and announce a decision.
But the last thing, will the president remain neutral? Or I mean, we used to say right now that the president will or will not endorse somebody before the primary is over.
Well, I've been asked this once before, and I have indicated that the president does plan to vote in the Illinois primary, and that ultimately it will be Democratic voters who are responsible for choosing the Democratic nominee. But I wouldn't speculate at this point about whether or not the president would offer an endorsement.
So you don't rule out the possibility he could say endorse Joe Biden or endorse Hillary Clinton?
I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't rule out an endorsement or Bernie Sanders. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of an endorsement in the Democratic primary. I am confident the president will support the Democratic nominee in the general election. Okay, Major.
Is the president torn by this conversation of his vice president possibly running against Hillary Clinton, 2 people he obviously thinks highly of?
Well, I haven't had an extended conversation with the president about this, and I certainly am not privy to the conversations that take place just between the president and vice president in private, like the one that presumably is ongoing right now. But no, I would not describe the president as torn, principally because this is an intensely personal decision that someone has to make to decide to run for president. And the president has spoken about his own decision to run for president and how that was that required a lot of consultation and consideration, particularly when it came to the impact on his family. And I know that that those considerations weigh heavily on Vice President Biden at this time as well. But obviously these are decisions that these individuals have to make for themselves. And look, as I mentioned to John, I think the president's view about Vice President Biden's performance as the Vice President of the United States should give you a sense of the president's belief in his aptitude for the top job.
You said a moment ago that nobody has a better understanding of what it takes to mount a national campaign. What do you think that should inform the vice president of? That it's too late?
No, I think what it does is it basically means that he is somebody who understands exactly what he needs to know to make this decision. And so it's not as if he needs to ask himself a bunch of questions with which he's unfamiliar. I think rather he will be able to conduct this process and have the conversations that he needs to have in order to make the best decision.
Does the president believe it would be healthier for the Democratic Party to have the vice president in the race?
Well, I haven't asked the president that question. Presumably, you'll have the opportunity to do that at some point. I think what the president would say is that individual candidates are ultimately going to have to make up their own mind about whether or not they want to run, and that's the first decision, first and foremost.
Last one on this topic, at least for me. Part of this derives from a sense expressed by some Democrats privately, some pundits publicly, and some donors not so privately, that Hillary Clinton is in trouble, that the email situation has caused her campaign to stall, and it's a serious ongoing issue as far as her trust and possible legal consequences. What do you in this White House think about the email controversy itself, and oughtn't it to be the source of all this consternation?
Well, I think what I would observe is that it is August of 2015, and the election is not until November of 2016. And certainly somebody who worked on President Obama's campaign in 2007 and 2008 will recall pretty vividly August of 2007. I think it's fair to say that there was not a ton of confidence in the likelihood that then Senator Barack Obama would be elected the next president of the United States. So I think what I would do is warn people against drawing conclusions at such an early stage.
So Democrats are unduly overwrought.
Well, again, there are plenty of observers to this process, and they can reach whatever conclusions they can reach, or whatever conclusions they would like. I think I would just observe that it's rather early in the process, and certainly if you want to consider President Obama's presidential campaign, there are dangers associated with assuming the outcome of the race 15 months in advance.